I'm not sure how many of you guys were here before, but it has been a wonderful day, and I get the honor of introducing the man that needs no introduction, Vitalik Buterin.
Okay. So, great, ask a question. That's, okay, so I see my first slide down there. I don't see it up there. Let's wait for this to. Okay, perfect. So why trustlessness now? I mean, I see we can only see the, the middle 80% of the slide. I don't know whether to classify this as a trust problem, but it's, software correctness is one type of trust, as I am going to talk about over the next 20 minutes or so. But why trustlessness now, right, is the topic that I wanted to talk about, right? So, look at this whole day, we're talking about this theme of building applications that, do not have choke points that can block you, that can steal from you, that can rug you. And, what is the point of this, right? And particularly, what is the point of this year as a time to actually really start doing something about it? So first of all, oh, I see, they fixed a bug. Why trustlessness? So trustlessness is not the only thing. Trustlessness is everything, right? So I'll let the meme speak for itself, but basically, we often, like in DeFi, we think about percentages like 3.6%, 2.4%, and of course, if you don't care about DeFi, then you're going to get 0% on your ETH. But then the thing that matters the most in finance is not the difference between 3% and 2%, and it's making sure you don't get 100%, right? So in Argentina, there was this event about 25 years ago, the Corralito, where basically the peso previously had a one-to-one exchange rate with the dollar, and then overnight they made this decision where they basically force converted everyone's dollars to pesos, and then immediately devalued the peso, and it dropped by about 70% over the course of 2 years. And so if you had your money in a centralized bank account, effectively during those 2 years, your APY would average minus 46.53%. Who here remembers Mt. Gox? So if you had your coins back in Mt. Gox, then Mt. Gox, of course, got hacked in 2014. If you had your coins in Mt. Gox, then I think you lost something like 80% of your money. And it's like different for I think for different people. And like finally they only managed to like really start doing proper repayments over the last couple of years. And then actually out of that, I think they discovered like some of the coins, and then there was like all kinds of fancy legal wrangling, and like actually the lawyers got a whole bunch of it. And then down at the bottom, right, if the wrong people discover how much money you have, or if the wrong people discover who you donate to, and if they discover where you live, then your APY is, well, you're losing something more important than your money. So trustlessness is very, very important. Also, who here remembers FTX? So basically, yeah. I love this sentence, right? It goes on all of the ads. Like, I think the FTX ads are like this perfect. It's like if you take like trustless :/ values and like you invert them 180 degrees, right? Like imagine if you turn them into like LLM embeddings, like swap the pluses and the minuses, and then you like take them back out, right? Like this is basically what you get, right? It's like one single person who voluntarily kind of put his face up to cover like 70% of every ad, and basically saying, I want to do good, but for the good to happen, you have to trust me, and for your money to not disappear suddenly, you have to trust me. And of course, the money all ended up being abused to do some leverage speculation effectively that ended up going wrong, and a whole bunch of people lost their money. So this is what we're trying to do better than in Ethereum. Trustlessness is eroded very easily, right? So trustlessness often does not disappear in one magic swoop. Trustlessness is something that easily degrades over time. And one of the analogies that I like that I know a lot of people use for this is email. So email is theoretically a permissionless and decentralized protocol. Anyone can make an email server. Who here has run an email server? Who here has had the experience of sending email from your own email server and then realizing that like you're immediately put into the spam filter by basically every other corporate email provider? This is basically what happens, right? And so email is a protocol that was very egalitarian, very decentralized, very permissionless in theory, but then in practice, there was this kind of de facto add-on of spam filtering that got added, and then in practice, the individual providers started making trust relationships with each other, and then in practice, all of these things started kind of piling on top of each other, and at the end of the day, basically email ended up not really being actually permissionless in practice. So trustlessness is eroded very easily. So if you use a trust-dependent bridge to move your funds from chain A to chain B, then the bridge can steal from you. Now, of course, one of the things that you can do is, well, you can take your money and then you can split it into 1,000 pieces, and then you can send each piece a bit at a time. And then if the bridge tries to rug you, at most you're charged effectively a 0.1% transaction fee. But then, of course, the problem is like you have to write that software, and then you have to, like your entire trade takes like a bunch of hours, and then your on-chain transaction fees go up by a factor of 1,000. And so if you have often, like you do actually wants to move a big chunk of your net worth from one place to another, and if you want to do that safely, then like we need a trustless bridge. A lot of DeFi protocols depend on on-chain governance. On-chain governance is something that can be hacked. It is something that has been hacked, and it is something that will be hacked again. On-chain governance can get corrupted by people bribing coin voters in all kinds of obfuscated ways. It can get corrupted because 95% of people don't even vote, and then it's very easy to overpower everyone else that does. It can get corrupted in all kinds of ways. Third-party dependencies in software. Actually, this one also applies in hardware, right? Like basically, our software and our hardware, the problem isn't even that it's made by one guy and you have to trust the one guy, right? Like, there's this famous kind of problem in puzzle in economics that actually shows that there's a certain type of decentralization which is actually bad, right? And it's like the kind of, like the N kings on a river problem, right? Basically, if you have one king on a river, then the king charges the toll, and the toll is going to be a high toll. And then, obviously, the toll is going to be pretty high, and so it'll deter a bunch of people from using the river at all, and this causes a bunch of damage to the economy. But if you have like 10 kingdoms on the same river, and you have to get like 10 out of 10 permission to cross the river, then, or to sail from one end of the river to the other, then like each one of them charges a separate toll, and then when each one of them chooses their toll, like basically they only pay 10% of the cost of setting a toll that's so high that it deters people, and so effectively like you get 10 people who are all price gouging you to the point where most people are not even going to go through the river, and then none of them really get much revenue, right? So it's like parallel versus serial, right? It's like parallel decentralization is good, serial decentralization where you need to acceptance from N out of N, like that's actually bad, right? And so what we have in our software is like we have 14 different dependencies, like a bunch of different software libraries, and people are trained to just like casually import things by default. And then if one of them breaks, then you can't even install your software. Like who here has had that experience? It's like you download a software package and it has like 20 dependencies, and it turns out one of them like doesn't work on your particular version of Linux or whatever. Then if any one of them has a bug, then you end up having a security vulnerability in the whole thing. If any one of them changes in a particular way, then the entire software has to rewrite. Then if any one of these dependencies is something that involves talking to a server, then these are the kings on a river, and any of them can sort of impose extra conditions on you, and a lot of them will, right? And often you have like these weird kind of cross attacks, right? Where you have systems that get sort of formally proven correct, secure within one model, but then there's this dependency in some totally different part of the stack, and there's some like flaw that's not even foreseen. And then with that flaw, that's not because of that flaw, like actually the assumptions behind the security proof are not even correct anymore, and there's like some weird combination attack that combines those two things, right? So third-party dependencies in a server, security holes, and the problem often isn't even that we have that there's one actor you trust. If there was, that would be a much better world. Often you have like 15 actors that you need to trust, and then actually each of them are trusting other people, and then there's this whole like crazy chain. User interfaces on a server, right? So Safe got hacked this year, and of course Safe. The contract system was fine, but the user interface, it was on a server, and so if you can hack the server, you replace the user interface with something else. And like by default, users don't really have any defense against this, and they lost over $1 billion. A centralized API in a DApp interface. So this is a privacy leak, right? A lot of dApps today, they access not just the RPC, they access a whole bunch of different servers. And if you have a dApp that accesses a whole bunch of different servers, then each and every one of those servers knows when you're online, they know your access patterns, they potentially get information from the dApp, especially if there's a software library attached. From your mouse movements, they could probably identify you. Like they learn a lot of things. If a price oracle gives the wrong data, then you're going to make a trade on an AMM where you set the limit price to be 2,000 instead of 3,000, and then your transaction might get shipped over to an MEV bot, you get sandwiched, and you sold someone your ETH at $2,000 and you lost a third of your money. If an RPC node gives you the wrong data, then putting the wrong data in transactions enables all kinds of theft in DeFi protocols. If your RPC node learns your access patterns, that's a privacy leak. Basically, your RPC knows what you did last summer. And it would be nice if we had a world where that was not true. So it's not even just about the core. It's about all of these different pieces across the entire infrastructure stack, where you're putting a huge amount of trust in like an entire set of different actors, and often you don't even know who those actors are, and then often it's not just the people you trust, it's like you trust someone who trusts someone, you trust someone else, and the whole thing is just incredibly brittle. Trustlessness is not something you should think about as a feature. Trustlessness is hygiene. Who are you allowing to see you digitally naked, right? Who are you trusting to not take your money? Who are you trusting to not permanently freeze your money, or your documents, or your calendar, or your messages, or simply by walking away, right? So often, there's a lot of projects on the like websites on the internet where just the existence of that website depends on a server. 5 or 10 years later, the server disappears because the company goes bankrupt or they get bored of running that particular service, and a whole bunch of links stop working, a whole bunch of data stops being accessible. So think of it as hygiene, right? Hygiene, it's not about adding a feature, it's about subtracting dirtiness, right? It's about subtracting risk. And I think this is the kind of spirit with which you want to approach trustlessness as well. Trust dependencies are a problem far beyond crypto. So this is not just an internal crypto topic. This is a 21st century global society topic. There's this book, The Uses and Abuses of Weaponized Interdependence by Henry Farrell and a couple of other people, which basically talks about how the the centralized traditional financial system originally started as this thing that was meant to help bring together a global world and give people freedom, but then because it had centralized choke points, it got turned into a tool by which powerful people are able to censor and exclude and effectively project power all the way across the world. This also, it's important to talk about hardware, right? I think a lot of us, we think about trustlessness in software. We sort of take hardware for granted, but hardware also a lot of opportunities for backdoors. There's a recent backdoor by which a whole bunch of like RFID smart cards to get into rooms were vulnerable to being cloned. So lots of these things happen, right? Like in 2015, the slogan is "Not your keys, not your coins." I fully believe in 2030 the slogan will be "Not your silicon, not your keys." Brain-computer interfaces. So these are starting to actually exist. They're starting to be a thing, and at the same time, of course, we have LLMs that can, read our facial expressions and guess probably how many hours you've been awake, if you've been happy, if you've been sad, if you're in the type of mood that today you might be especially vulnerable to being scammed. So that's. Information is power. Whoever has information about you has power over you. And BCIs are something that is powerful for productivity, powerful for empowering the disabled. It's also something that I think will be necessary to continue to give humans maintain our relevance in a world of AIs becoming more and more powerful. But at the same time, we're literally talking about things made by people like Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg reading our minds. Who here wants like Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg to read your mind? Okay, a few hands. I don't know, who here wants, like 10 cents to read your mind? Okay, also not many hands. Let's go around the world. Who here wants Nokia to read your mind? Okay. So I see Elon and Zuck get a couple more takers. That's interesting. But like, I don't know, the dominant opinion seems to be that you don't want the big corps to be able to read your mind. Actually, it's worse than reading your mind. Also, these things are going to be able to write to your mind. I think this might have been at one of the previous DAC days, but there's like literally a thing that you can put on, and it's like only a little bit more obtrusive than sunglasses, and like basically the thing like almost gives you a seizure. And so writing to your mind is like way easier than you might think. And so this is also a form of trust. And so we do not want things like this to have untrusted 57 dependencies of dependencies, corporate supply chain dystopias, the way that we have become accustomed to with Web 2. An important thing to think about. Today is not about a cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency is the warm-up. We have the technology to improve on this. So let's first of all, we'll talk about blockchains. So we have much more secure bridging protocols that people this week have been talking about. Then we have governance minimization. So there's a lot of work in building protocols that are much less reliant on governance, and where governance has a clearly defined, clearly limited role, where as many functions as possible are made governance free, and those functions that cannot get time locked. Research into capture resistance. I know there's a group called Anti-Capture that's been analyzing how to make DAO governance more difficult to capture. Dependency minimization, so making your code not just like gratuitously depend on 10,000 line dependencies if you only need one function. If you need one function, just like stick it in yourself. UIs on IPFS. This would have prevented the safe hack. Like, I think we need a world where DApp UIs live on IPFS and their hashes are on chain, and you actually need the DAO itself to approve an upgrade of the interface directly. On-chain version control also of software libraries. ZK snarks opening up a lot more frontiers for like privacy-preserving applications. Privacy is a super important dimension of trustlessness. Private reads. So there is basically, if you want to make your RPC not get all of your data, there's these like 2 work streams that we're working on in Kohaku. One is the TE plus ORM approach. Basically, you do still have to trust this trusted hardware thing, but the good news is that effectively, instead of trusting an RPC provider, you're trusting like a 2 of 2 between the RPC provider and the hardware. And then there's this other approach, PIR, which is purely cryptographic, and this is like mathematically ideal. The problem with PIR, of course, is that it's like less efficient, but also the efficiency has been improving quite a bit. So we can improve on a lot of these things. Okay. Now, trustlessness goes beyond crypto. Local first software, including local first AI. So who here has had a conversation through a messaging app in the last week? Okay, that's a good baseline for just how many people don't raise their hands for anything. Who here has had a conversation over a messaging app where as part of that conversation, you have to like click on a message to auto-translate it? Okay. Now, chances are the auto-translate that you used was not local first. And so even if it was on an encrypted app, for the translation, you're shipping everything off to Google. So there are very good local LLMs already, right? And this is something that we can actually use more, that we can integrate more. And for translation is one excellent use case. There's a lot of excellent use cases for this, right? I think there's a big open space for someone to really, like make an operating system that like properly uses local first tools to do translation, like including real-time voice translation, transcription, talk to the computer, deep research, agent stuff, code editing, all of these use cases, do it open source, do it local. This is also trustless technology. It is important. Secure communications. So I think over the last 2 years, we've seen this amazing flip from Telegram to Signal. For how many people here is Signal their primary communications app? For how many people was that true 2 years ago? See, okay, like still many, but probably about like half or even less than half as much, right? So Signal is really getting up, which is good. There are things that are being built that attempts to be even stronger than Signal. So Session and Simplex are 2 of them. There's also more. Secure operating systems. How many people use Graphene OS? So also secure open source hardware. Again, not your silicon, not your keys. This will become an important theme. Also a plug, DEAC Day, coming up very soon. And DEAC Day, one of the things that we have here, this is an air quality monitor where the newest version has some cryptography built in, basically ZK and FHE stacked on top of each other, so that you can collect data about local environments without compromising the privacy of any individual. And so you can enable science and public health and all of these good things without the downsides of basically a biopanopticon. I think panopticons are a big deal, right? So one of the things that it's good to appreciate is like people often focus on, the flashy cameras, and there's these like scary pictures, and you have like, like 5 different cameras going around covering like a 360 by 360 view, and then sometimes for like added irony value, the camera is like right above a poster that's that says, whoever gives up liberty for safety deserves neither liberty nor their safety, and then you have like the camera right above it, right? But like that's such a small part of it, right? Then like there was a paper this year where basically like literally Wi-Fi hotspots, you can turn them into surveillance cameras. Then on the other side, like audio is enough to determine the password of someone typing on a keyboard in an adjacent room. So that's been a thing for a while. Also, if we go back to air sensors, right? The CO2 level in a room it can tell you how many people are in the room. It can tell you when people entered the room, when people left the room, distinguish between different people. It can even tell you when people like started and stopped doing various physical activities in the room. So you might think CO2 is just a number, but actually CO2 reveals everything, right? So this is, I think, really like thinking about how do we get information about the physical world in a way that is not a total privacy dystopia is a super important topic, and how do we do this in a way that we can actually trust. So we can make the Ethereum ecosystem a standard bearer insisting on these goals, right? We as Ethereum can be an ecosystem that really adopts and takes in trustless and maximally trust-minimized technology, both to protect people's assets from being stolen, and to protect people's assets from being permanently frozen, and to protect people's privacy. And we can use these things across the Ethereum ecosystem, and at the same time, we can build and we can use tools that have value that go far beyond Ethereum, and that can enable a much more secure world, and I think a much brighter 21st century. And so I invite all of you to join us in this journey and work on trustless technology. Thank you.
All right, we have time for just 2 quick questions. The first is going to be, what do you think of the state of trustless bridges?
I think it's improving, right? Because I remember like 2 years ago, basically everything was very trust dependent, and then like this year there's been all of this like progress. Like there's like even like the intent-based stuff in the OIF, and then now like we have EIL finally like announced, and it's amazing work that I'm excited about. So the level of technology is really going up, right? And there's like more and more like actual concrete guarantees that you can get out of the bridges that are both the ones that are in alpha and even the ones that are in production, which is good. We're definitely far from 100%, right? So, I mean, to get to 100%, right, you also have to remember, the bridges have to be trustless, and then the other big thing is the L2s themselves, right? Because like, there's no point in having a super amazing, super perfect bridge if the underlying L2s that you're moving between are still basically multisigs, right? And so I see there's a lot of good progress continuing in L2s moving to stage 2. I see a lot of good progress in like bridges progressively reducing trust assumptions and like thinking about this, like rigorously and like and not settling for second best, and really asking like, how do we really get these assumptions down? Like basically get people to the point where the experience you have in the Ethereum L1, L2 world is like the same standard of security that you would have if you're just moving things around on L1. And so, no, I think it's it's a process, and like I've been seeing a lot of signs of improvement, and so I'm optimistic that like something will. Something that really satisfies our standards of trustlessness will be available quite soon, and then will become like very mainstream over the couple of years that follow.
And given the context of MEV, isn't the block proposer trust dependency?
It depends what you use it for, right? I think because the way you ask whether or not something is a trust dependency is you ask, how much can you get hurt if they hate you? And basically what the block proposer can do is they can censor you for 12 seconds. And if you have like one actor that is the builder or you have like 2 actors that are the builders that are making 99% of the blocks, then those 2 actors can censor you on average for 20 minutes, which is like potentially enough to liquidate you, which is quite bad. We're not currently at anywhere close to that that level, but we need to really make sure that we're not going to get there. And so I think we really need to get fossil so that there's more actors in parallel who can include your transactions quickly. Also, another thing, of course, is that if you as a user are sending your transactions to a builder directly, the builder learns your IP address. That's also a form of trust, and I think this is also why not just mempools, but even combinations of mempools and mixnets are important. The other thing, of course, is that for many types of transactions, you're not sending from an EOA account, and there's today a lot of use cases that rely on relayers, and relayers, they often break, and they're also a privacy leak, and they also sometimes break as well, and so that's something else that needs to be improved. So, block proposers are they're very, very far from being custodians, which is good. But at the same time, we don't want to be complacent and just assume that block proposers are this kind of magic cloud in the sky that's going to do the right thing.
And will you humor me with one more fast, short one from a little 10-year-old hacker?
Sure.
Do you know where Satoshi is?
Fortunately, I do not. And I give him a great, a massive round of applause for actually successfully preserving his privacy for all of these 15 years. A lot of people have told me that that can't happen, and it has.
I appreciate it. What a wonderful talk. Big round of applause for Vitalik.